Hey guys, this is Dan Wowak from Coal Cracker Bushcraft. Today we're going to make some rawhide. I have a deer hide here that I harvested about 2 weeks ago, and I fleshed the backside out, and then I brought it down to the stream and I put it under some rocks just to hold it down so it didn't float away, and it's been in here since then. Okay, so the reason we don't put it in the stream is we actually want this hair to start to slip. Now, once I got the hide, I fleshed it on the leather side to get all the fat, membrane, muscle, anything I missed when skinning the animal out. And then once I placed it in this stream bed, the hide begins to swell up, and in a sense it begins to rot somewhat. And that's what's actually going to allow all these hairs to start to slip out of this hide. Okay, so as you can see, I'm getting clumps of hair out here. So I'll show you a little bit how we're going to do this. Actually remove all this hair from this hide, okay, just so we have just plain old leather, and then it's pretty easy just from there. So we'll get some close-ups of that. I'm actually going to use the bone scraper that I used to initially flesh the leather side of this hide to help me along with the process. You can let this hide in this water just about as long as you would want to, and that hair will just get easier and easier. It'll actually start to fall out more and more on its own. But for this sake, I'm going to show you how simple this process really is, and then we'll go forward with it from there. Okay guys, so hopefully you can see here, as I get this hide and just pull, we're getting, this hair is just falling right out, okay? Just like this. So we're going to do this for the whole entire hide. Just keep pulling this hair out. Okay, if we get some stubborn spots or anything like that, then that's where I'm going to grab my scraper and I'll just scrape a little bit. So as you can see, that hair is falling right out. No problem whatsoever. Okay, so we're going to do this whole hide like this. I'm just going to sit and work with this for a while. Just keep pulling out all this hair. Now you can keep this hair as insulation if you would want to. I read that Indians used to use this in their moccasins. They would sew 2 pairs of moccasins and stuff in between, and they say it's extremely warm, so that's always an option. Or you can always keep some of this, use it on your trap line as some attractant or anything like that. Maybe put some of your lure on here. That might work well also. So once we get this all stripped out, we'll go from there. Okay guys, so I continue to work with my hide, and the hair was slipping real well through the center, but not towards the edges. So I actually put it back in the stream, which that's not going to hurt it at all, for about another week. And then I came back out today to finish up my hide. So I'm still working on it, but as you can see, it's really coming out nice. Good and clean. A little bit around the edges in some spots, like in here. So I'm going to have to work on that. But I don't think it would hurt too much whatsoever to leave a little bit of hair around the edges. If it's being a little stubborn, it's not going to hurt because you're going to mainly use that middle section of your rawhide. Of course, if you're in a long-term situation and you're really going to need rawhide for a lot of different things, maybe then. But I'm going to try, if the hair stays in after it gets hard, try to make a sheath or something like that out of it. So the next step in this process, now that the hide has been dehaired, is basically to stretch it out and allow it time to dry. So in a primitive or woodland type situation, all that you need is basically 2 trees, and you're going to get some cordage and tie it in between the 2 trees, nice and taut, and leave it dry. What I'm going to do though, just because over the next couple weeks I'm going to be doing some traveling, and I didn't want to just leave the hide out here, and I also wanted to show people that are at home that maybe don't have access to a wooded environment, that they can just leave a hide out, or they're not comfortable leaving out in a public type area and they're afraid something's going to happen to it. What I do at my fur shack, where I handle all my furs, to actually put the hide up. So it's a real easy, simple process that way. But again, if you're doing it in the woods, 2 trees with some cordage, leave it go, it'll get nice and hard, and you have yourself some rawhide. So we'll pick the footage up. I'm going to get this hide back to the fur shack. We'll get it on a stretcher rack that I have made and show you how it's done. So to make this stretching rack, quite simple. You can use any kind of wood you found. Now this wood, these are just furring strips that I had around the house. They're approximately 6 feet tall in length. and I cut 4 of them, so I just made a big square. Now of course if you had a bigger hide or a smaller hide you can adjust that, but 6 foot works pretty well. And then around the edges I just used bolts to fasten it. And then all throughout the frame I drilled holes, and that's what we're going to run our string through when we do this. So I have my hide hanging right now, and the first 2 tie-outs are probably the most critical in the fact that it's going to help you center it off the best. So I'm going to hold this hide, and I just have it draped over right now. I'm going to look about where this hide reaches out to, and this hide reaches out to about the 2nd hole in on each side. So I cut enough rope and I ran it through the outside holes, and I'm going to punch out, and what I'm going to use for that is just a small awl. If you go my blacksmithing series, I have a video on how to make an awl, but you can use any kind of awl. You can use your knife, small pocket knife, anything, even a nail, just to punch through the hide. I'm going to punch out the 2 corners and get them tied up so the hide is quite even here in this rack. And then you want to go about a finger width in, thumbs width, 2 fingers, somewhere around there, in, and punch your holes and stretch your hide out good. You don't want too much U-type shape, which I'll show during the video. You want to try to keep it stretched out as much as you can. So the more holes, the better, in a sense that you want it nice and conformed, because it's going to shrink in, so you're stretching it to hold it out. And then we're going to let it dry. So I'll get some footage as I go along with this. I'm just going to work through it, and then once it's all up on the rack and strung up, I will show you guys what it looks like. So now I have my hide, I'm beginning to stretch it. And what I'm doing is I took the 2 furthest holes on my rack, and I put the 2 furthest corners on my deer hide, and I evened them out, and I made sure that when I pull this down towards the bottom and stretch, then I'm going to be close to about the same. Okay? So as long as you get this nice and centered and you take your time with this, the rest of it should fall in place for the most part if you do what you need to do. So a couple things. You can use individual strands of rope through each hole that you're going to punch, and there's really no set way you need to punch these holes. Okay, you want to sort of just look at your hide and see what works best for you, how you can stretch it, get maximum stretch on that hide. Or you can just do a running stitch with 1 piece of string or twine all the way through your entire hide to stretch it. But you want to work at different angles. So I'm probably going to go down into here and get something, and then you can always cut that, remember. As long as if I get this stretched out, I can cut that as I work down if I need to re-stretch or anything like that. So just take your time and play with it. This is also the time, if you have any holes in your hide, like this, my entry and exit hole, sew this up. So I'm going to get some sinew out. I'm going to stitch that up before I stretch it much more and get those good and tied up. Now, as you can see, there is a little bit of hair left, but that has been pretty stubborn as far as coming out. So we're going to see what happens with that, see if it falls out during the process. I know some of this around the edges is falling out that I didn't get to, so I'm going to work on that as we go. But if there's anywhere on here that's real stubborn, like this area, I'm going to let that there and see, and then maybe I can make something out of the rawhide if the hair still stays on it. We'll see how that works. I never tried that before. So I'm going to work on this, get a little bit of footage as I go, and show you how this progresses. Okay, so I have my top section done, as you can see. I'm just taking my time. I tied out my bottom so I have nice tension already starting through it. And as I go, and this tension will get more and more throughout the whole thing and getting a good stretch on there. So I'm really going to use all of this frame. Like I said, these boards, I'm 6'2", so these boards are just a little bit less. So maybe they're a little under 6 foot. So this is a quite large hide that I'm working with here. And I'm going to have a lot of good rawhide when we're all done with this. So I'm going to keep working around this frame and show you what it looks like once I get it all finished up. Now that the hide is strung up on our frame, as you can see, I got it as even as I could, good and taut, so there's a lot of tension there. We're basically done the whole process of making rawhide. We just have to allow this time to dry, and it's going to get extremely hard. And once it's hard, we can cut it down off the frame, and we'll have ourselves a nice big piece of rawhide. And then we can make anything from hide glue to bowstrings to knife sheaths, just about anything that we want with this piece of hide. So it's going to give this some time to dry. It is colder out, So I don't know how long. I know I'm going to deal with some freezing temperatures at night here. I might actually, after a few days, move this inside where I do all my fur processing. But for right now, I'm going to just let this here for a day or two, and it'll be fine just sitting out. Again, just let it get hard, and we'll have a piece of rawhide. Okay guys, so I cut down my rawhide off my stretcher, and it came out pretty good. As you can hear, the whole thing's hard. So I'm going to keep this in a dry place now, and I have myself a nice big piece of rawhide. I can even roll this up, because now that it's good and dried, you can roll it up, stick it inside your shelter, and then you have rawhide for whenever you would need it. So we'll do some projects in the future with this. I want to thank you guys for watching my channel and watching this project. Stay tuned for more.